He's 24. He wears steel caps to work every single day. And while his mates are still asking their parents for rent money, he just settled on his 6th investment property. This isn't a lottery win. This isn't family money. This is what happens when a tradie decides the tools in his van are going to buy him a life nobody else on the job site even thinks is possible. He grew up in Penrith, the kind of suburb where everyone's parents worked 2 jobs and nobody talked about money at the dinner table because there wasn't much to talk about. At 16, he started his apprenticeship. Up at 5 a.m., on site by 6:30, home by 5, exhausted, same as every other apprentice in the western suburbs. The difference started small. While his mates were tipping their whole Thursday pay into the pub, he was still living at home, banking almost everything. Not because he had some grand plan yet, just because he hated the idea of being broke his whole life like he'd watched his old man be. By 19, he'd saved 40 grand, enough for a deposit, not enough to feel ready. He remembers the exact day he signed the contract on his first place, a rundown 3-bedder in Mount Druitt, cheap because nobody else wanted it. His hands were shaking. 21 years old, about to owe a bank $400,000. His mates thought he was mad. Why would you buy a house in Mount Druitt when you could be overseas right now? He didn't have an answer that sounded smart at the time. He just knew that houses in growth corridors don't stay cheap forever, and he'd rather be uncomfortable now than comfortable later and broke. He rented it out immediately, kept living at home, and kept saving. 18 months in, the renovation on a small update went over budget. Then a tenant trashed the kitchen and did a runner on the rent. For a few months, he genuinely thought he'd made a huge mistake. Then he sat down with a mortgage broker who explained something nobody in his family had ever mentioned. The value of that Mount Druitt house had gone up enough that the equity sitting inside it could fund a deposit on a second property, without him saving another cent. That was the moment everything changed. Not the money itself. The realization that the first house wasn't just a house. It was a machine that could build the next one. Property 2 came 12 months later. Same corridor, same strategy. Buy where growth was coming, not where it had already happened. Property 3 took 8 months. Property 4, 6. By the time he bought his 5th, he wasn't scared anymore. He was just doing the numbers, the same way he'd read a set of building plans. He started looking outside Sydney too, picking up a regional property in a mining-adjacent town where yields were higher and prices hadn't caught up yet. That was property 6. 6 properties. 24 years old, still working full days on the tools, still driving the same ute. Ask him what he'd tell a 19-year-old apprentice starting out today, and he doesn't talk about spreadsheets. He talks about the missed nights out, the holidays he didn't take, the years he spent living at home while his mates were renting share houses in the inner city and posting about it. He's clear that it cost him something. Time, social life, comfort. But he's just as clear about what it bought him. Options most tradies his age will never have. Let's run the numbers one more time. 6 properties. A 24-year-old tradie on a $75,000 salary. A portfolio now worth over $2.1 million. Built without family money, without a lottery win, without a 6-figure salary. Just deposits, discipline, and equity recycled again and again. He didn't earn more than you. He just started 3 years before you will. If this story hit home, you know what to do. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.